Welcome to everybody. So how it works today is that when we do these Cooperative Women's Voices interviews, me and Bex keep in turns to lead the interview. So this week, Bex is going to be taking the turn to kind of lead the interview through Susanne. So I'll just do a really brief introduction to people who've not been before. So what I want to do is just say welcome to our if you don't mute as well, just we're conscious there's an echo. So Jenny, brilliant. So I want to say welcome to our 11th Cooperative Women's event, and today we're going to be talking to Susanne Westhausen, who's the CEO of Kooperationen in Denmark, the President of Cooperative Europe and the Vice President of ICA Coop. We just want to do a brief introduction to the Cooperative Women's Voices and to us. So I'm Sarah Aldred, so I work at the Cooperative College and I head up the international partnerships work. And welcome to Bex Harvey, who is the editor at Coop News. So Coop Women's Voice is a joint project between Coop News and the Coop College, where we run a series of conversations with women across the global Coop community. So the overarching goal is really to raise the profile of women's voice across the Coop movement and to engage in rich and creative discussions on issues that are important to women. These women will be role models to other women, so it's important to know the sources of their lives. So all the women we've been talking to, it's really about understanding the women rather than the role. So because of that role model, you know, we want to kind of just to get underneath the skin of the different women, so and understand their journey and the passions. And what this follows on is a series of events that we've been doing over the years, which have been linked to Women's Challenge, which was launched in 2010. Myself and Bex did also a series of face-to-face events in the UK in 2017. So as I said, today we're delighted to welcome Susanne. Susanne comes from a family of social democrats. Susanne scuba dives. She's got a background with trade unions and public administration, and is now the CEO of Kooperationen, the national cooperative apex in Denmark. And as I said before, she's the chair of Cooperative Europe and the vice chair on the ICA. And just a bit of housekeeping rules before I do hand over to Bex. If you get any questions, please just put them in the chat. There's a chat function below. And what I'll be doing, because Bex is going to be leading us through the interview, I'll be kind of just feeding those questions into Bex. And we'll probably have 5 to 10 minutes at the end just for any open questions for Susanne. But Bex, it's over to you. And also we potentially have another little person joining us, which is Elliot, which is Bex's son. So he may be running around in the background. So we welcome Elliot as well. So Bex and Elliot, over to you.
Hi everybody, that's really good timing, Sarah. He's just running around. Thank you so much for everybody coming today. It's lovely to see so many of you here. And hi Susanna, thank you so much for making the time for us today. Hopefully it should be really strong and stimulating discussion all about a remarkable woman based in Denmark. So Susanne, if you'd just like to introduce yourself, and if we can begin with a loose question just about who are you and what do you do?
Well, thank you, Bex, and thank you, Sarah, for inviting me here. I'm very thrilled about your project. It's a really good idea. Well, yeah, who am I? I mean, Sarah already said a bit about it, but well, I'm trained as a lawyer and have been doing a lot of different kinds of work here in Denmark and in Copenhagen. I've been working at the public authority in the municipality of Copenhagen, doing a lot of organizational training. I've been working with the TUC in Denmark, and doing that I've been looking at different angles of not necessarily doing business as such, but how to level playing fields for good governance and training managers and leaders in different positions. So where did I come from? I'm born and raised, as Sarah said, in a rather social democratic family with a little bit of tentacles to both sides. My grandparents were workers here in Copenhagen. My one grandmother was staying at home, taking care of the family. The other one was working in a shop. And both my parents are lonely children, so they left Copenhagen for a small town across from Copenhagen, 100 kilometers away. And that seems to be really traveling far. It was out in the country. They were both teachers, and at that time, the schools in the rural areas hired married couples, because that was the easy way to have teachers come from Copenhagen, where they were trained. So there I was, growing up with a brother and mom and dad. It was a caring family, a family where we were told that, well, what you want to do, you can do, if you set your head to it. And it was a very, very involved family as well. They were very active in local community, partly because, of course, they were children, and they knew all the children and the families in the areas from the school, but also from genuine interest and the notion of being obliged to pay back to the society where you are living. So that was the surrounding. Yeah, is that who I am?
You tell me.
It's always a balance, because it's like hanging in a bar. People come, oh well, who are you? And then it's like 2-3 sentences, and you're either in or out, or you can talk for 3 months. So
sounds like a really quite an idyllic childhood then. It sounds like quite a beautiful upbringing. How did that impact you as a young woman growing up in Denmark?
Well, since this conversation is a lot about maybe obstacles for really unfolding your potential as a woman, maybe that's where I should focus. And my kind of upbringing, there was no difference between me and my brother, apart from the fact that I was the oldest and he was the youngest, and there's always some expectations, blah blah blah, for the oldest. So but that put aside, there was no difference. I mean, if I wanted to do something, they would say, yeah, right, go ahead, do it, and if there's anything you need, then come ask for it. And well, it seems to be quite easy. I've never really experienced as a child or a young woman that there was something which was not possible for me to do because of my gender at all. And I think maybe, well, I wouldn't say that it's the same for everybody in Denmark, but Denmark is a fairly equal country in that sense. I mean, of course, we do have gender problems in Denmark as well, but they're not very, very large or big or difficult for your average Danish person.
And were there many co-ops around where you lived, and were your family involved in co-ops at all?
Yeah, there is, and there were. I think my first cooperative experience was every year coming Christmas, there was this carrier bag with little I don't know, sticky notes. Well, they weren't sticky. You had to lick them in order to stick them, because you got your dividend from the co-op supermarket as stickers, and then you had to put them in books, and then you could go and get money back in the co-op, and that was always coming Christmas. So that would take the most of a day to sit there and stick stickers in the book, and I don't think I understood why, but that was sort of the first cooperative experience. In the clear hindsight, I can see that my parents were also very much involved. I mean, they were founding mothers and fathers of an antenna. Is that the right expression? Antenna association. So you put up this huge antenna in order to be able to see Swedish television, German television. Yeah, so that was one. Windmill. Some of the first windmills were co-owned by the citizens in the rural areas. They were into that as well. And then, of course, since it was a rural area, there was the waterworks, there was the electricity, that sort of things, and then the co-op shops. But it wasn't like, whoa, that's a co-op, or well, we're doing this together. It's like, well, that was just the way things were done. So yes, there was a lot, but it wasn't something which was special.
We'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, Susanne, but is that still the case in Denmark today, do you think? Do you think people still cooperate without calling it cooperation?
Absolutely. And I think one of the reasons why is that we do not have what the rest of Europe, apart from the UK, knows as a cooperative law. I mean, you have your registration. We don't even have that. So when people want to build co-ops, we have to figure out what kind of legislation is the right one to use, and then of course work with the bylaws and things like that in order to make a real co-op. But since you do not have this law, we call it Association Denmark. Forenings Denmark would be a very commonly used term in Denmark. And we have this saying that every time two people get together, they set up an association, a co-op, to do whatever they need done at the moment. But it's not. If you ask the average Dane, they would maybe, if you help them, they would remember that there's something called a co-op. But then if you really press them, they would say it has been invented in Denmark, and it's only something we have in Denmark, which is not exactly true. But that is sort of the notion that this way of doing things, we do it in associations, in foreninger, and it's something that we have invented ourselves.
That's really interesting. Before we talk a little bit more about co-ops, let's bring it back to you a minute. So you kindly shared some photos with us, so I'm going to go through some of the photos you shared. I haven't edited them at all, so they're going to come up in the order that you sent them. And I know some of them are really small. I'm sorry, everybody. That's a really pixelated one, but I think, is that you and Jean-Louis Bancel?
It is, exactly. It's from this autumn when I was elected chair of Cooperatives Europe. So it's from a wonderful day in Paris with my wonderful friend Jean-Louis, who was the stepping down president of Cooperatives at the time.
And he's still head of the French Apex, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yeah.
And this is you?
Absolutely.
I'm curious about this. What's going on here? And again, I'm sorry that these
yeah, it's well, like in the UK, we have a tradition of I don't know what you call them in English, but people who draw for the newspapers. They make funny pictures of people. So this one was from an article about the cooperative movement in Denmark and the social economy in Denmark. And when I first saw it, I thought, whoa, that's a weird one. But then I don't know whether it's my own explanation, but it looks as if, wow, this is a strong movement. And so I've really come to love the drawing. So it's from a newspaper article. That one, that's from Mondragon. A couple of years ago, I went there with some people from a business school, a business university here in Copenhagen. Mondragon is a fantastic place, and whenever you want to really get people into this thinking about where cooperatives can be taken, then it's fabulous to take them to Mondragon and really see things for themselves. Mondragon is not something that you replicate easily, if at all, but there's such a lot of inspiration to gain from going there.
What lovely ones of you?
Yeah, that was from when I was hired first here for my now position in Kooperationen. So that's 17 years ago. Wow. And just another one from the same period. That's a good one.
This looks like a fun trip, fun day.
Yeah, that's my favorite way of spending my holidays, scuba diving. And this is with my good friend Tine, who's opposite from me, and my husband in the white t-shirt, and then some wonderful locals who always find the most fantastic areas, the most weird fish and little critters on the bottom. So this one is from Indonesia. It's it's a long time ago. I mean, the last 2 years we haven't been able to travel, but I think it's 4 years ago.
Got this one.
That is from Buenos Aires, where we had an ICA General Assembly some years ago, maybe also 4 years ago, 3 maybe. I think time is sort of blurry at the moment. Yeah, again, water, snorkel.
What is it about scuba diving that you love so much?
Well, there are 3 things. One is that if you want something which is really beautiful, which is really weird, which is super interesting, then you have to travel far, and that's not very sustainable in terms of emissions. But when you get there, the magnificent thing is that very often you will have no cell coverage, so you will be left in peace for the duration, and that's wonderful. The other one is that when you're underwater, well, you can do nothing but just look and feel and be quiet.
Can't take calls, can't check emails.
No, and you can't even talk. Well, you can, but it doesn't make sense to the fish or to those you're diving with. And the third thing is, and I really think that's interesting, is that very often we go away on a boat and stay on the same boat for, say, 2 weeks with 10, 12, 14 other people. And we will talk about the fish and about the equipment and things like that for 2 weeks. And we will know what we're called, maybe just our first name. And when we go home, nobody would have talked about what we do in our everyday life. So it doesn't really matter if you're high or low or thin. This is just the interest for, well, a certain part of the world, which is underwater.
Have you got a favorite diving experience you could share?
Yeah, actually it was, that's 10, 12 years ago, where we went to Papua New Guinea on the, what is that? That's northwest corner. There's an area called Raja Ampat, which is the place on Earth where they have the largest diversity of critter and fish. And we were there together with a BBC film crew doing a bit on pygmy horses giving birth, which was absolutely amazing to see them go there every day for 10 days to catch just the right little bit of footage to do their BBC thing. Yeah, that was really amazing.
Sounds beautiful. Who we got here?
We got me and my crew here in Copenhagen, in Madrid 3 years ago, where we went visiting and visited loads of fantastic cooperatives in Madrid, of the very small social kind, and it's always fantastic to go somewhere else to look at what you do back home, because it gives you new insights in a fabulous way.
It does.
And these are a favorite bunch of young people from CCU Bulgaria. I had the great privilege again some years ago to do I don't know, what was it? It's a 1.5 year program for these young people. All of them were employees of CCU in Sofia. And we were looking at starting new cooperatives in Bulgaria. And this one is from a training facility that we have here north of Copenhagen. Some of you might remember that we had the Cooperatives Europe General Assembly in something called LO-skolen. That's the staircase in front of that. And they actually ended up setting up a social co-op in Bulgaria. And that's not the same people, but the same group up there as well. Same. I think what we were actually doing was we were training at this training facility. Every morning they sing a song just to start the day, and this bunch wanted to learn a Danish song that they could sing in the morning, so they actually did. Yeah, fantastic. Sorry. Yeah, that one is one of my all-time favorite pictures. This is me and my oldest and best friend Meta. Her parents and my parents came to this small town together, all 4 of them being teachers, and this is us at our first day in school. Well, that's really a long time ago.
You both look so happy.
Yeah. We were looking so much forward to it. I mean, yeah, it was fantastic. And yeah, this is my family, my mother, my husband, and my husband's granddaughter. Yeah, this one is from the Kuala Lumpur ICA General Assembly. Actually, I would have thought that you had picked some of the pictures. Well, never mind.
Oh no, we'll use them all.
So this is just, well, I think it was in a bar that they had this silly thing you could stick your head in, and well, I'm not the one for not sticking my head into things. This is with 2 very dear friends, Agnes Matisse, who is the Secretary General of Cooperative Europe, and our good friend KK from Singapore, who's unfortunately deceased now, but a very dear friend. And that is in Matera in Italy, where we also had an ICA board meeting.
So I've got a company now.
That's good.
It's great. So let's talk a little about Kooperationen then. How did you first join? How did you get involved?
Yeah, it was sort of by coincidence. As I said, I've been working with the municipality of Copenhagen and with the TUC. And actually, I was looking for a new job. I was in the city of Copenhagen at that time. And I was sort of thinking, well, I would actually like to do something that involved doing business. And I had some conversations with some of my friends, and my very good friend that you saw on the stairs before, she said to me, well, don't do that. If you haven't got your heart in it, it won't be good. And doing ordinary business is, well, it's not good for your heart. So I was sort of sitting there trying to figure out what to do. I like doing working in politics, but I wanted something different. And then one day, same friend called me and said, I need your mobile phone number. I said, yeah, you've got that. Yeah, but I can't find it. Give it to me. I said, why? Because there's this, I think they call them headhunters, who has just called me, and I think this is just the job you want. And I gave it to her, and a few minutes later the phone rang, and there was this lady saying, well, I'm so and so, and we are now looking for a CEO for an organization called Kooperationen. And it is like, and then she started explaining, and I said, well, actually, I know what it is. And she was sort of flabbergasted, saying, do you know what it is? I said, yeah, because I've been working with them when I was in the TUC. So yes, I do know about it. So it was sort of a little bit of a coincidence. It wasn't something that I had planned because, well, firstly, I didn't know that the position was open, and secondly, I hadn't really made the connection that working in an organization like this would actually cater for both the political issue, but also the thing about doing business or helping others do good business. So that's how I got here.
And how did you get from there to being vice president of the ICA, the International Cooperative Alliance? Excuse me, sorry? How did you get from there to the ICA?
Yeah. Having started here, I was, of course, invited to a General Assembly in Cooperatives Europe, and I think it was about at the same time the MEC was purchased, and there were a lot of things going on. And there was this lady at the end of the table, sort of really sort of boom, 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 this is what we want to do, and how about that, and very visionary, very, very to the point. And those of you who know her will know that I'm talking about Pauline Green. And I was totally fascinated by the way that she had this huge overview of what was going on in all of Europe on the cooperative movement. I mean, I had been here for I think 6 months or something like that, and I had no idea what was going on. So that was really, really interesting. And I thought, okay, if somebody like that thinks that organization is viable, is interesting, then I better find out what it is. And then, of course, you can lean back as a member and see what comes in your mailbox. But well, I don't know whether I'm very impatient or something like that. But I decided, okay, if I want to know what's going on, then I need to invest in this organization. And at the next General Assembly, where we had elections, I stood for election and was actually lucky enough to get on the board. And then they were talking about vice presidents, and then I thought, okay, so they were all male. I think actually at that time I was the only woman. There were quite a few women accompanying some of the men, but I was the only elected woman apart from Pauline. I thought, it's not going to be full men. No, I'm going to stick my hand up and say, well, why not? I'd like to do that. And I think maybe they were a bit confused, because all of a sudden we were more than the 4 they needed, and they actually had to decide what to do. And well, I became one of the 4 vice presidents at that time. So sticking my nose out is probably what got me there. And same goes for the ICA. It was like, well, there was election in Kuala Lumpur, and Cooperatives Europe were looking for keeping the same number of representatives in the ICA board as we have had so far, and there were a few stepping down, among them Gun-Britt Mortensen from Sweden, who's also one of my all-time favorite cooperative women, and I thought, yeah, well, why not? We need to find out what this ICA is, because ICA and Cooperatives Europe is, of course, 2 sides of the same thing, and we cannot have opinions on ICA if we don't know what it is. So yeah, that's how I got there.
In the chat, Helen said it's amazing how many women Pauline has inspired. I think you're exactly right, Helen.
Yeah. But she is one of a kind, I think. Yeah.
Susanne, can I just ask a quick question in the middle of this? Because I know when we were chatting last week in our pre-brief, you were just mentioning, because I was really interested in that transition from public administration and working in the trade unions to them working for co-ops. And you said this really interesting thing that was you can't work without your heart. So could you just talk a little bit about that? What do you mean by that? And what is it about the work you're doing now that gives you that?
Sure. Well, with my training and my background, I could have I don't know, gone elsewhere and made a lot of money. A lot of my friends have done so, but I think in order to do that, in order to work like 50, 60 hours a week, you want to do it on, if you're me, you want to do it on something which you like and which connects well with the little bit of life you've got apart from your work. Actually, I've always had very it's been very difficult for me to separate work or private life, because it sort of floats. And if I had been offered a job in one of the big banks here in Denmark, I would have felt bad doing what they do. I think one of the funniest emails I've had here in the Kooperationen was 2 years ago. I had an email asking, what does Kooperationen think about whitewashing? I thought, whitewashing, well, why do they ask? But I wrote about what do you think about that? And then it turned out to be one of the middle large NGOs in Denmark, wanting to become a member of our employers organization. And I asked them, of course, why do you ask? And they said, well, we need somebody, an organization which is close to our own values. So it was important for them. So this doing business without having a purpose which is good for society, yeah, that is necessary for me to be able to really be my best.
That's a really, really great question, Sarah, and it kind of leads on to my next one as well, about that combination about your life and what you do. I mean, how do you see COPs helping women in different countries and cultures and regions and sectors by combining what they do and how they do it and how they're feeling, and what COPs can do for them as well?
I think we, of course, in this day and age, there are specific problems for women that co-ops can help. But if we look back and more look at people, it's like, to me, the cooperative business model is a model for solving ordinary people's ordinary problems, and therefore, of course, also whatever problems women may have in their everyday life, if they need better access to certain goods in the supermarket, well, it's easy to get it if you own the shop yourself, and if you have to go through somebody else. I think a very, very good example is I think it was in the middle of the 80s in Portugal. A lot of men traveled north to Germany and Denmark, the Scandinavian countries, to work, because there wasn't a lot of work to be found in Portugal. And the women there found themselves left alone. A lot of the things that the men did before wasn't being done by them anymore, because they had left. So they sort of looked at each other and say, hey, what are we going to do? And figured out that they could do it together cooperatively. And we have a lot of very, very interesting women cooperatives in Portugal, which is a little bit different from what we see in other places. Cooperatives are, well, due to the 7 principles, it's a fine way of providing education or training which can be difficult in some areas, in some countries, for women to have the access to school. And yeah, this is one of the 3-week speeches that we haven't got the time for, but it is a natural way of providing for ordinary people and for women. And what we see is very often that the ones I'm sorry if there are men here. Very often we see that once the women grab what the co-ops can, some of them tend to get rid of their men because they can do things themselves, and they do not need to rely on dubious husbands to bring back whatever they bring back. And that's interesting.
I love the phrase dubious husbands. I'm going to be using that in my day to day now. I mean, so you've mentioned a couple of women who've really influenced already. You mentioned Gudrun and Mita and Pauline. Who are the other women who really helped you throughout your life? Or men?
Yeah, I mean, my mum and dad, of course, and well, friends, good friends. It's difficult to point to specific people, but having a group of good friends is the most helpful thing you can have. People who are with you all through your life. Some of them I call witnesses to my life. I mean, somebody like Mita, you saw, I've known her all my life. So even though we don't speak every day or every week, we are witnesses to each other's life and know exactly what's going on. And if something is up, that's a safe place to turn. And I think that's one thing where men should really envy women, and I don't think it's a myth, but women are better at having networks which they can rely on in difficult times. So that goes for me as well.
Susanne, you did mention one man when we spoke this week.
My dad.
You mentioned your dad, but you also mentioned, in terms of the cooperative world, you mentioned Ben Reed.
Absolutely, Ben is one of my favorites. Yeah, and why? Well, because he's great, but also because, and excuse my French, he had the balls to stand up in the General Assembly in Kuala Lumpur and saying, look, you've got to vote for women for the board, and I'm going to vote for as many women as I can, even if it's going to cost me my seat. Excuse me, gentlemen, that's balls.
And I just think the reason I've asked you to mention it is because of having male advocates as well for as well, which was, and you were very animated last week when you were talking about Ben. So just thank you for just mentioning.
Absolutely.
It's interesting what you're saying about the Portuguese women's co-ops, because you mentioned a couple of others brilliant women's co-ops, including the Log Ladies. Can you talk a little bit about them?
The Log Ladies, yeah. It's a worker co-op here in Copenhagen, and they're carpenters. And the reason why they have set up their own co-op instead of being employed by any carpenter in Copenhagen is that they want to do work in a very high quality, and they want to work sustainably. They want to work with sustainable materials, and they want their work life to be sustainable towards their families and themselves as well. And well, they're doing it. It's really fabulous, and it's great to see that we have women in these kind of jobs. we've had house painters for ages. A large percentage of the house painters in Denmark are women, but the other craftsmanships are not really that much for women. And they have been doing a lot of very good work in what do you call that? The schools where they're trained to be carpenters, vocational training institutions, because they themselves experienced a lot of sexism and being not treated very well, but they are some tough young ladies, and they sort of faced the music and went to the headmaster and said, we're not going to stand for this is not right. And I think they actually managed to get rid of a few of the teachers who couldn't behave.
So what would your message be to young women or older women in today's world, whether they're cooperatives or not? What would your advice to women be generally?
To believe in themselves and to be curious and to go do it if they feel like it. I mean, very often the worst thing that can happen is that you're met with a no. It's very seldom physically hurtful, and I think that a lot of young women will experience that they will be let in many places where they could think, oh, this is difficult, but go for it, because there's no reason why they can't do it.
I'd say you can only be told no, can't you? You have to give things a go.
Absolutely.
So we've got a big thank you from Karen. So thank you for organising. It was wonderful to hear Susanne's reflections. I'm sorry about the background noise here. I have a meeting starting in a minute with the women leader at Eurixie regarding our efforts to organise the International Co-op Business Education Consortium. So thanks again for being strong women in the co-op sector. So yeah, a big thank you from Karen. If anyone else has any questions for Susanne, please do add them to the chat. I'm going to ask our final question and then open it up for questions. So Susanne, the big question that we ask all of our guests is, if you're stranded on a desert island, can be in a hot place, in a cold place, wherever you like, what 3 things would you take to sustain you?
Mm-hmm. That was a difficult one, but I've been speculating, and I've come up with a book, my snorkel, and a knife.
What do you think?
Pardon?
Go on, Sarah.
I'm going to say what you think, Bex, because we have to kind of consider those 3.
I think we need to find out a bit more about each one. So which book?
Yeah, what book would it be?
Well, one which is so big and extensive, and yeah, with so many words that it can last me the duration I have to spend on that island, because I love to read. That's sort of the essence of that thing. Yeah. I hate reading on my iPad or my phone. I want a real book where I can make notes, I can make corners, I can pass it on. And well, books are really a very big thing in my life.
Yeah, we've had a solar powered Kindle before, so I think we're going to allow that. What do you think, Bex? What about the other 2?
The snorkel. Yeah, it's an island, and when you say an island, I thought, well, it's a very small island. Well, I can read most of the time, but it's also interesting to see what goes on below the water, the what do we call that, the surface. And well, of course you can dive down and you can open your eyes, but it's a blur. And to those of you who has never used a pair of goggles and a snorkel, please do next time you visit the water, because you will have maybe the scare of your life, or maybe just a wow about what goes on. Even if you just sort of wade out into the water and stick your head down, there's so much life there, and it's amazing, and we really need to protect it, because it's so beautiful. And that's where you really sometimes end questioning the theory of evolution, because some of the creatures you see there, they're just amazing. So that was a snorkel.
The knife, what are you going to use the knife for?
Well, I was thinking about the third thing, and I thought, well, a knife can be useful. I mean, it can, well, you can carve things, it can help you climb trees if you want to pick a pineapple. If it's a coconut, it might help you open it. You can defend yourself, you can open a fish, you can do such a lot of things with a knife that you can't do with a fork or a spoon. So yeah, a knife, yeah.
I think we'll let those.
Okay, we'll let you have them, Susanne. Okay.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Brilliant.
So we've just had sorry, Bex, we've just had a question in from, or a comment really, from Jenny. We need to coordinate better as a global movement. How can we do this better? How can this be achieved?
Yeah, that's a long one, and one which we are desperately and constantly trying to find ways around. One of the big issues is actually language. I mean, here in Europe, English is a good way, but as soon as we cross borders towards Asia and we go into the rural areas, you won't really find anything, any recognition there. Language is a problem. What we're trying to do now in Europe is to get a better picture of what the individual members are doing, not necessarily the individual co-op, but the individual member of Cooperatives Europe, what they are doing, not what they want Cooperatives Europe to do, but what they are actually doing. Because if we get that picture, then we can see, okay, where can we pair people, where can we match, and are there any holes where we can see, oh, this is something which need to be taken care of. But it will, as long as our organizations are so fairly small and rather poor, sorry to say, but both ICA and Cooperatives Europe are small organizations with not a lot of with not very large budgets. Then it's difficult. But I think that the things that you're doing with the cooperative news, I know we talked about it before, Rebecca, is one thing that we could do better. Training, as Karen and also Sarah, of course, are working on. Also, I think we can do a lot better without really doing a lot. We just have to do things differently. We have to have this mapping of what is going on, and that is one of the things that the consortia that Karen is leading now is also looking at, how we can map what is going on not only in Europe but in the world in terms of training and governance, development of governance, good governance. So sorry, Jenny, can't fix it. Maybe if you have a magic wand.
Yeah, that would be good. It's great, Susanne. Absolutely. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you to you.
So is there any more questions for Susanne?
I've got another general one about cooperation, if it's okay. So it's slightly off tangent, but I know the ICA World Cup Congress had the theme around deepening the cooperative identity, and the idea of what cooperative identity is, what it is to organisations, to countries, to people. I think it's going to be quite a long conversation over the coming months and years. So I wondered if, from your perspective, Susanne, what does cooperative identity mean to you as a woman, as a cooperator, as a vice president of the ICA in Kooperationen and everywhere else?
It's the backbone of all of those that you just mentioned here, and it's is there an English word as the differentiator, the things that differentiate us from everybody else, and something where we have to be really, really clear and to the point, because I think it was Sonia Novkovic who a couple of years ago said that if you don't if we don't look out, if we aren't sharp, then we will lose the battle of ideas. And what she meant by that was that we've had some fairly blue water for our way of doing business. But these days we are really having a lot of red spots in it, because, well, actually it didn't start, I mean, almost 15, maybe even 20 years ago, when the talk started about CSR policies, and everybody was running around doing a CSR politic. Well, if you look at it, a lot of it is just hot air balloons. And I had members calling me because in some of the tendering here in Denmark, the public government started asking for these CSR policies. And some of them called me and said, where do we get one of these? And I said, well, you don't need to, you've got it already. It's your values, it's the principles, it's how you work on that, with that. And then we're sort of like, oh, wow, that's easy peasy. So they did that. But we need to really make sure that it's not something that we just say, that we actually can prove that we are doing things in a different way than the ordinary business is, because they have started saying that they do what we do. And it may sound as a bit of a negative approach to other businesses, but somehow it's sad if they can wear our wonderful feathers without having earned them. And it doesn't work for them on a long time basis if they just buy consultants to come and tell them what their policies should be. Our values have been here for more than 100 years, and that is what really makes a difference. And we can see this year, 2022, is actually the 100 years jubilee for Kooperationen. And a lot of our members are actually more than 100 years old. And well, it goes without saying that the principles and the values are what has been the difference. That's why they have lived through all the crises and through all the hardship.
And you mentioned there's no co-op law in Denmark, though, is there? Is that something you're working towards, or is it a possibility?
Well, we have a governmental working group at the moment looking at it, and it's not a walk in the park, because, as I said, we have been setting up co-ops for more than 100 years. So we have foundations, we have strange constructions where we have shareholder companies and foundations and things like that are put together in order to do the good things. And if we have a new law, it will create some problems for these old companies. But we are working hard on having legislation which will level the playing field for startups, for the entrepreneurs, so that it will become easier, it will become more obvious that this is a different way of doing business, and hopefully we will succeed, but we'll see that in a couple of months.
Well, good luck to you.
Look more confident when you say that.
Well, Jenny, did you want to say something? I see you tapping away. Oh, she's gone. That's fine. If you've got any other questions, please do put them in the chat now. Otherwise, I'd just like to say thank you so much, Susanne, for taking the time today. It's been a fascinating conversation. It's really interesting to hear your different perspective as well. I can see a couple of people applauding. So thank you very, very much again.
Thank you for having me. Thank you to all of you who spent time with us.